Good afternoon. Simply want to say welcome to you all on behalf of Hope Church. I'm Gordon Wiersma, one of the pastors of Hope Church, and we're so grateful that you're here for this organ celebration concert. It's something that many of us have been looking forward to. Grateful for Hope Church folks here, for community members here to celebrate the completion of this project. We'll be having some remarks during the concert from Rhonda Edgington as she and her colleague Carolyn Keeble will be performing the concert today. Dan Fisher, who has headed up this renovation project, will be offering some remarks as well. So again, welcome and enjoy. Bruce Tenhaken, our hospitality manager, why don't you come down the center aisle here, Bruce? Anybody, there's two pieces here. There's a program and an info piece. And if anybody needs those, we'll just take the time to get those. Really, Dan, you didn't get one? Come on, that's you shouldn't have. That's great. You can share also, but there's plenty of those to go around.
Thank you all for being here this afternoon to celebrate the completion of our organ project and to enjoy some music for the organ and percussion. Carolyn and I have been playing together for a number of years, and we've been finding pieces that can work for our ensemble. And that one was composed by some musicians that she works with in Kalamazoo area, and then they arranged it for organ, and so that we would have another piece to play together. The following piece coming up is by a Nigerian composer who now teaches at Cornerstone in Grand Rapids. And Carolyn and I did a project at Calvin where I also teach of West African music, and he arranged this piece for organ and congas, and he originally wrote it for orchestra and congas. And he based it on a very famous song by the Nigerian composer Fela Kuti, who's actually not a classical composer, but he wrote a lot of protest songs. And this AfroBeat style piece is a really fun and uses these drums up here. You'll see Carolyn moving around in the chancel with all the different percussion instruments. It's usually just one set of drums per piece. So hope you enjoy the next piece. The next piece is by a living Japanese composer, a woman, and she is a church musician and an organist, and she writes really idiomatically for the organ. And I discovered her works when I heard her a piece by her at an organ convention, and I looked up her pieces and found that she had two different pieces for organ and percussion. So we're going to be playing the one which is using some of the Japanese taiko drums, and then a little later on the program we'll be doing another one. This one was exciting because normally every single piece we play has a different set of drums that Carolyn and I drag out of her van and set up and then drag back into her van at the end of a concert. So we have one piece that actually, or two pieces that use the same drums. So that was kind of exciting for us. So it was kind of a no-brainer. We had to play that piece. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dan Fisher, and I represent the organ renovation team. And welcome all of you as we celebrate the completion of our Hope Church organ renovation project. And I can't think of a better way to celebrate than having Rhonda and Carolyn presenting this beautiful music for us today. Let's give them a big hand for this music. So this is our Reuters Opus 1502 Hope Church organ that was built in 1965. And in 1965, you couldn't just go to your Sears and Roebuck's catalog and order a pipe organ like this, like you could a lot of things. And for those of you who don't know who Sears and Roebuck is, they're like our Amazon.com today. Okay, Amazon. So, but it's recommended that an organ be renovated every 50 years or so. And if it's well taken care of, that organ can last to be 100 years old or 150 or 200 years old or more, like we see in big churches in Europe. So it's a very important thing. And a couple of years ago, we decided to renovate our organ. It was about time. And for a lot of reasons, things wear out, like our homes and our cars, and certainly the organ does too. And a lot of things weren't working like they did when it was back in 1965, as Ronnie could tell you. There was lots of things going on inside the organ, so it needed a renovation. So in order to be successful at any kind of project like this, the best thing to do is get the right people on the bus. You want to pull an A-team together, and that's exactly what we did. So our team included Rhonda Edgington, who knows everything about this organ, or a lot about this organ. She won't say everything, but there's a lot to know, and it's very complicated. Gordon Wiersma, who is very critical, especially in terms of decision making. Trevor Dodd. Trevor, I know you're here somewhere in the back. So Trevor was our consultant. He's a local engineer who is an expert on organ build and renovation, as that's what he used to do. And if you remember, during the renovation, we had a temporary organ up here that fed through a computer to get the sounds through the loudspeakers. That was all Trevor's. And Trevor, your work on this project was just immeasurable. I appreciate so much the work that you've done. So, yeah, we also had Paul Elzinga. Paul, are you here? Oh, Paul, yes. And thank you, Paul, and just all your work and experience into this whole project was absolutely perfect. And then myself. And we also had some other support during this project, Carrie Miller in terms of some of the aesthetics and artistic stuff, and Andy Mulder for some of the legal and contract work that we did, and Bruce Tenhagen during the coordination with the contractor during the renovation project. But our team got together, and there was a lot we had to figure out, like what's the scope of the project? What are we going to do? What's it going to cost? How are we going to pay for it? Who's going to do it? So for about a year, we worked on all these things, and we finally selected a contractor, Reuters organ build company out of Illinois, to do the work for us. And but let me tell you just a little bit briefly about the organ itself, because you don't see it all. You don't see everything going on here. First of all, I always think there's 4 different key components for an organ. The first is the pipes. You can see the pipes up here. You can see maybe 70 pipes or so. We actually have about 2,400 pipes of lots of different configurations. There are tall ones like the 32-footer in the back. You have some pipes that are about as small as a nail and everything in between. You have metal pipes, you have wood pipes, you have square ones, you have round ones. In fact, there are 42 different kinds of pipes giving us different timbres or different sounds called ranks. Every rank has its own unique sound or timbre, and typically has 5 octaves or 61 keys. So it could sound like a trumpet or an oboe or a flute. So Rhonda has access to 42 different ranks or 42 different sounds coming out of those pipes. And also you have an air source that's got to feed the pipes air to get the sound come out, and that's actually down in the basement under here. And there's a big motor and a big fan providing that air pressure into some bellows, providing a constant pressure. Now, in the old days, before electricity, there'd be people downstairs with a big lever pumping those bellows, which we don't have to do now, fortunately. And we did have a major failure in that about 3 years ago. The leather and the sealants around to the wood gave way. After 60 years almost, it's not unusual, and we had to replace it. The next thing is the organ console itself, and we've gone through a complete renovation of that as well. There's a lot of moving parts on that organ, the pedals. There's 3 different manuals or keyboards, all, dozens and dozens of stops and controls and registers and things like that. So major renovation there. It's completely refinished. It looks beautiful. But all those moving parts, they wear out and they've been replaced. And we also put in a complete new electronic system that does the communication between the organ console to the stuff in the back. Now, what's in the back? There's a huge room back there. If you've ever been there, it's really exciting to see and a little dangerous to walk through. But it's full of all sorts of piping and things called wind chests, which are the devices that get the signal from the organ and they start moving different slides and things that will allow different ranks to play when certain keys are pressed and stuff like that. So there's all these moving parts back there all the time, which is really, really cool. So a lot of work had to be done there too, because you got a lot of leather parts after 50, 60 years. They degrade, they wear out, they fatigue. And all those had to, 14 or 24, 2,400 of those had to be addressed and replaced, and new seals and a lot of other things taking place down there. So it has been, this is a very important project for Hope Church, I think. And this organ has served us very, very well. And I'm really happy that we've now brought it back online after the 7 months of renovation. It looks beautiful. It sounds wonderful. And I don't know if you noticed, but if you look at the little handout, it actually looks different than it did before. And not everybody really noticed that after it was done, but it's much, much more beautiful, and it really sounds wonderful. Our renovation team is really very, very happy with the results of this project and the work of Buzard Organ Company, who, by the way, their team here was just fantastic. They really respected our church and who we are, and they worked very well with us. And again, Bruce is and Gordon every day was very active in interacting with them. So I would just like to thank all the Hope Church members who contributed, financially to the Sustaining Hope Project to make this project happen, and to all the people who were actively involved in making this project come forward the way it did. We have it's a very successful project. We have a lot to be proud of, and so this is a day to celebrate. So thank all of you for being here for the celebration.
Just wanted to wait a moment for Dan to be seated. I won't ask him to stand again, but Dan gets to thank everyone else. But I wanted to give particular thanks to Dan Fisher. Really wouldn't have been, I'm not quite sure how we would have done this project without him. Dan has a remarkable combination of technical expertise, which include working with Excel spreadsheets in a way that I never want to get to that level in my lifetime. And I'm so glad that Dan is at that level, along with a creative capacity for music. Dan is himself Grammy nominated. Did you win one yet? Grammy-nominated composer himself, a wonderful composer, so he understands music, and that technical and creative combination I'm finding is a lot of what musicianship is about, too. We find that in Rhonda and Carolyn and musicians, too. But on behalf of Hope Church, we want to thank you so much for all of the time, the passion, the creativity that you put into this. Thank you, Dan. And then it seems you can't say thank you too much, and I just want you to be sure what's in here, so I'm going to read the thank you that's in the bulletin. Thank you to the Organ Renovation Project team, Dan Fisher, Rhonda Edgington, Trevor Dodd, Paul Elzinga, and myself, for their dedicated and creative work in bringing this project from concept to completion. To the Buzard Pipe Organ Builders crew for their skill and care in carrying out the renovation work. To the Hope Church staff and facility and hospitality manager Bruce Tenhaken in particular for their coordination and communication for this project. To the congregation of Hope Church in 1965 that installed this wonderful organ to support the worship life of our church. How many Hope Church folks today here were here in 1965? Raise your hand. Look at that. Isn't that pretty cool? That's wonderful. To the congregation of Hope Church today that generously supported the Sustaining Hope Capital campaign, which allows us to enjoy the organ for years to come and generations to come. And to our director of music and organist, Rhonda Edgington, for her leadership. For her leadership, skill, creativity, enthusiasm, and vision, for blessing our congregation and community with organ music that brings joy, inspiration, and hope. Thanks be to God for the abundant gifts that grace us for this day of celebration. Thanks again to all of you for coming.
So I'm going to play an organ solo next. I'm going to give Carolyn a break. And I thought because a lot of our pieces are very intense that I might have something give us a little breather. So this is a lovely setting of the 23rd Psalm by an American composer, Eurydice Osterman. And she is an African-American composer, author, professor, and Fulbright scholar. She is taught at universities in Alabama and Jamaica. And she has her bachelor's and master's of music from Berrien Springs University here in Michigan. And there's 3 different movements. They all flow kind of seamlessly from one to the other. So I'll give you a little clue. The Valley of the Shadow of the Death start with kind of an ominous, low section that I think you'll notice, and there's a lot of half step and chromatic things in that section. And then Dwelling in the House of the Lord is a really fast moving, kind of joyous sounding section. So I think that'll help you find your way through that piece.
back to the noisy stuff with drums. She said, well, do you want to do a taiko solo? I said, gosh, I don't think so because it's an organ celebration. So if you come to another event, sometimes we each do solo pieces on the program, but we also have a couple concerts coming up later this season in Ann Arbor and Chicago, so we wanted to share some of the pieces we're doing on those other programs. This is the second rendition, though it's the first incarnation of Two Heartbeats, as Rhonda had mentioned. And we got just the absolutely sweetest email communication from the composer for these pieces. So as you might imagine, in the world we're living in, it's pretty challenging for composers to get their music played. And so one of the great joys for any of us is for our songs to be enlivened and to be shared in the world with others. So composers don't often have the capacity to play all their pieces themselves because they're imagining things on such a grand scale that involves many other musicians. So we're so happy to play her piece that we decided, well, let's do both of her pieces because it was just such a sweet exchange, and her appreciation for having her pieces played half a world away. I think we did the premiere of this piece in the U.S. Several concerts ago, and that's just kind of one of those little moments that, what we can do and what we can offer for one another as creatives and be a community where we try to champion one another. So you'll hear also a new piece from Chee that we'll share a little bit about after this next one.
Thank you. That may be the closest I'm ever going to get to playing rock and roll, but it's always really fun. Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I have a rock and roll career ahead of me still. So the next piece, Carolyn and I were able to commission with the help of a colleague and the University of Syracuse, and it's by a young Native American composer whose work I got to know at the University of Michigan at a conference, and really loved his pieces. And if you like this piece, you should look him up on YouTube. He has some really wonderful videos of himself playing some of his piano works. This piece is, he's a Navajo composer, and this piece relates to the Navajo tradition of calling out the four directions at ceremonies. And he talked to us about there's four movements, and each of the movement is based on a rhythm around the Diné word for the different directions, which we're not going to try to say for you. But the rhythms that Carolyn is playing on the drum correspond to those syllables. And he also talked about kind of a mood of each of the directions. So the opening movement is the east, and he said that's the sunrise, and they associate that with a thinking time. Then the second movement at the south, he said the south is the daytime, and that's a planning time. And he said the west during the sunset is a doing time. And I was just thinking about this yesterday. I thought maybe this is especially applicable if you're in a very warm, deserty place, that you don't start doing things until the sunset, right? And then the north, the fourth direction is the nighttime, and that's the reflecting time. So this is a four-movement piece, and Carolyn will be playing another set of drums. This last piece is kind of what started this crazy journey of Carolyn and I's. Together, I heard this piece many, many years ago in Germany, in fact. I had no idea what taiko drums were, but I was in the cathedral in Bremen, and a Japanese organ student was playing a recital, and she started playing, and in the back balcony, there was this gigantic drum that somebody was playing, and I was like, what is that? That's such an amazing piece. And I kind of stuck the program away in a box, as we tend to do. You circle it, and then you say, oh, maybe I'll play that someday. Make a long story short, I found Carolyn, who said, sure, I'll play that piece with you, when lots of other people said no. And she didn't know exactly what she was getting into. And the first time we performed this was actually here in Holland at Hope College, 2019, I believe it was. And this piece makes us a little crazy every time we pull it out. And if you want to come and look at the score later, I'm doing all kinds of crazy, hand fists on the keyboard and stuff. But that's kind of a side note. It's a very evocative piece, and I like to say that you don't actually have to understand what exactly is going on here. If you just kind of get ready for kind of an oral experience. And I will say that there's 3 movements. The first movement starts with this very rumbly sound in the organ, some very low sounds, and Carolyn's playing some very minimal things, and it just kind of is a gigantic crescendo until. And then the second movement is she's all playing little wood blocks and gongs and things, and we like to say that there's this whole Japanese tradition of the forest, right? And wood sounds, crickets, frogs, so that's what we like to think is going on here. Birds chirping, there's lots of little funny chirpy sounds. And then the third movement is a little bit of the mirror, the first movement, in that it starts out very static, and it just builds and builds and builds. And if you've been saying, when is she gonna play the big drum? It's at the end of the third movement. She will play the big drum, the odaiko. And there's a cadenza on that. And so when she moves over to the big drum, you're like, oh, we're almost at the end. So it's a little intimidating for us as performers, but we have grown to really love it, I think. And I think it's kind of an amazing oral experience, so I hope you feel the same way when we get done.